Splendori. I know that on Thursday, 29th of February, you've got Dr. Brian Pennie. You're talking to him about human connections and neuroscience. And so exactly what would people expect on the 29th?
So what we're talking about, it's really important that the whole idea of addiction is something really interests me. And it's not just substance addiction. What really interests me is the way we become addicted to so many different things.
Thank you, Tommaso.
And garlic bread.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Brilliant.
And I'm just noticed.
By the way, I have no idea what he said. What did he say there? Okay.
Garlic bread.
Okay.
Anyway, the whole addiction piece really interests me, especially at the moment. There seems to be a huge problem with gambling addiction.
Right.
And that seems to have permeated through society and through young people because of the online, right? And porn addiction and social media addiction. So anyway, I just was really interested in figuring out a little bit more about it. So Dr. Brian Pennie, I had him on the podcast about 4 years ago when he was just coming out of 15 years of substance addiction. He was addicted to heroin, and he has since got a degree and a PhD in neuroscience and psychology. And it's a really interesting guy that talks about the importance of connections and being the opposite of addiction. So I think it was Gabor Mate says the opposite of addiction is connection. So I want to explore that a little bit more and really for people to understand that, again, going back to the community and the importance of how we can look after each other, how we can perhaps give each other that shoulder that we need, because it's so easy to find ourselves in our own room, and 3 hours later or 4 hours later, the time has passed, and whatever we've been addicted to. So I just wanted to hear his side of it. He's a public speaker. He does a lot of keynote speaking on the subject. So he's very well read and very well. He's a great life experience to it as well as being just a theory.
You must be somewhat glad of the fact that in recent times, compared to my generation and your own generation, all that, people didn't talk to each other, even in a family, about what they were going through. Never mind, within a community or within friends. And there does seem to be a culture now, and some people may even have a problem with that everyone is kind of much more open about, this is what I feel about, so many things that can be scary in this world, can be disorientating, can be isolating. I don't know how you feel that there is a healthy time, or whether it's still a process of learning, or...
I think it's still a process of learning. I think there is definitely a cohort of people that are happy to talk about, and in a way it's that wellness industry, right? That it's creating this conversation, which is brilliant. And I think it's fantastic to have. At the same time,
some of them are shysters though, right?
Absolutely. So,
okay.
But no, and I think it's important even that are we leaning too much on that kind of wellness industry without really having the conversation we ought to have? And that's what I always wanted to do with this podcast. I was always trying to create a conversation without any judgment, for people to take away and think, okay, that was great, it wasn't so great, I better go and research a bit more, I better have a conversation with somebody about it. And that's really what has been the last number of years I've been doing, is little things have started because of the conversation I've been having.
Well, it's not like you could say too that there's like an answer to the riddle. There is just the need for conversation, and then that can help individuals, whatever their needs may be, or how they feel it suits their world to move ahead in certain ways. I guess, I don't know, from the start of Social Fabric to now, if you feel that you've learned a lot, whether you feel it's just always going to be little victories and little kind of moments of clarity, and it is a case of always exploring and always questioning. And
I think what I learned a lot of is, so I started with about 6 years ago, you were one of my first guests, but I started with the idea of...
That was probably the best episode.
You were the best episode ever on really, that day.
Yeah.
And but it was with the idea of mending the fabric of society, one conversation at the time. But the way I'm thinking of it now is, if you have a nice old jumper and there's a little thread coming off, do you throw it out, or you just maybe try to put a piece to it? And that's really what I'm thinking is, and that jumper doesn't need to be thrown out, it needs to stay, and you might get another thread falling apart, but if you just close your eyes, nothing's going to happen. If you're not talking about it, nothing's going to happen. So I'm really happy with the little victories. And I don't even know if they're victories. It's really what has happened out of the conversations, whether the live events or the little conversation I'm having with people, because little communities have got together. People have decided to have their own conversation outside of the podcast. And I think that's good enough. And I just hope the more of that, the better it's going to be.
Well, probably victories is the wrong word. Just little wins, and that there is a little kind of a sense that something was explored today, and we got somewhere good with it. We found something that we didn't understand before.
Yeah, and what I find, like even especially the live podcasts are brilliant because you get an immediate reaction from the crowds, and people come up to us afterwards, to us, myself, and whoever is the guests or the guests. And even the last one I did with Dermot Whelan, there were a couple of things that I've since heard the stories afterwards. People have just taken from that conversation and they made a decision they were waiting to make for a long time. So that's, to me, it's worth doing.
I'm fascinated by the duality of people absolutely want to help each other and want to be healthy and want to be happy. But then I think there's something in the Irish nature, and it's strong here in Greystones, that you just don't want somebody else to tell you how to do it. There's this constant battle of, when you look at something as simple as It Takes a Village, just trying to figure out what is best for kids in this very, very confusing world. I'm an old man, I'm confused by social media and by what's out there. But of course, some would just think, you're not going to tell my kid how to live. There's that great duality going on, which I suppose is just human nature. You just don't really want to be, I don't know, give yourself over to somebody else's ideals or...
Yeah. I think that's why what makes my shows interesting for me and for the people, for the guests more than the audience. The audience is up to them to decide whether they're interested or not. Is that we're not giving advice. We're not telling people what to do. It's a conversation. We put out there whatever may be the case. So in this case, it's about addiction and neuroscience and connection. Are they going to learn anything? I don't know, but maybe there will be something that will hit the right note with one person, and that's all it's going to be. Maybe the other 120 don't feel anything out of it, but my guess is something. We all have this. There's always something for each one of us to kind of explore a little bit more.
I'm pretty convinced that social media, 1% absolute genius and wonder and colour and kaleidoscopic, everything, and 99% nonsense. And it feels like a billion barking dogs trying to get your attention. Is there any way we can get it shut down? Do you have any influence? Do you have any...
Yeah, no, I'm working on it. So that would be for my 6th series. The 6th series we're going to look at shutting that down. It's really interesting. I've just finished a paper. I'm doing a psychotherapy and counselling course at the moment. Just finishing a paper I need to deliver the day after tomorrow on social anxiety and the impact of social media.
Right.
And as much I was hoping that we get the answer, it's not quite there yet. But so look, I think what we're trying to do, what I'm trying to do, and the guests that come along that love the environment, love to know that they can speak freely, no judgment, and then once it's on the plate, the audience can take over.
Now we should wrap up. You're doing your first live show in the Laughter Lounge. You're going to be with the Happy Pear boys. They're a great example of, here's two guys who literally hand walk the hand walk. They do actually live the way they preach, we'll say. And yet there is that U2 effect where you become so successful, some people adore you and some people think, get that feck. They are in an incredible position now where they have that sort of, they've settled into being almost, iconic in Ireland's kind of landscape. That's going to be a challenge now to kind of go through the interview just to figure out, where they're at and where they're going, and because it is a peculiar place they're at now, I think.
Yeah, and what I'm going to do in the Laughter Lounge with them, it's going to be 20 years of business. You and I know them from day one. And we know kind of the persons behind the personas, which I think is important. But what I'm fascinated with them now is they've been very clever. They put Greystones on the map as well.
Sure.
Veganism in Ireland to an extent, if we want. They've done a lot of that. But now they come to, they're not quite full circle, but they're coming around the circle, both from a business point of view, from an age point of view. And I'm just curious to see how they're reinventing themselves, which they will, and they are, in a positive way. I think the difficulty is going to be to see how they might do things in the future, because again, social media has been great vehicle for them, but
Yeah.
it's still going to be the same thing in
Yeah.
the next few years. So, excuse me, that's still after launch on the 25th of April. So it's going to be a
Brilliant.
first. It's a beautiful venue. Up to now it's been just comedy,
Yeah.
but since COVID they started to do some podcasts, so they got in touch with me to do it. And they were quite keen to have the happy pair. So it'll be my third or fourth time on stage with the boys, and it'd be nice to kind of delve into a little bit more. It's 350 seats. It's beautiful.
Right.
It's really nice.
And you have a few jokes up your sleeve in case the wrong crowd turn up.
Just in case everything goes.
Here's a good joke. Since we're in a restaurant, did you hear about the one-armed butler?
No.
He could give it, but he couldn't dish it out. He could take it, but he couldn't dish it out. There you go. So we'll wrap up. I do think that Greystones is sort of seen in many ways as a blueprint for what goes on in the country because of our. Generally, we're near I guess we're near RT and all the media people and all that, but we do seem to pop up again and again as a sort of maybe this will work for the whole country. Your own experience, do you feel that we're in a healthy place? Do you think we're in a period of transition? I feel it's a transitional time, but maybe that's always the way.
I think it's always a transitional time. I think it's great that we have a lot of initiatives and that we keep trying things out, and people, the media, as to say, like to shine the light on us, but there's a lot of work, and I don't think that's going to be changing anytime soon. So even the Takes a Village, even the Happy Pair,
Yeah.
it doesn't happen overnight. And even when it does happen, as you call it, the Bono effect, once it happens, then people seem to walk away from it for some reason. So I think just keep talking and keep having conversation, keep doing what you can, look after your cul-de-sac, and things will get better. That's all you can do.
Boom.